Good morning. So now we are taking up some questions regarding the course on creative writing. There are certain fundamental questions regarding creative writing which I would deal with in the form of a narrative, illustrating from some creative writings, anecdotes, episodes, also impregnated with some kinds of examples. The issues which we'll take up are: what is creative writing? Can creative writing be taught? Sometimes the student asks, can I write, or do I have creative faculty, intuitive faculty? Intuitive faculty, when I say, I mean like the art of creating something, like a spider makes its web, the bee makes its beehive. So that is intuitive, impregnated with. Then we will be having other question. What is the theory? Generally, students are also concerned with, is there any process of creativity, any theory? Then enlarging consciousness, that is again a very important quality of a writer. So how far that is needed, or how far it can be cultivated? Then what is the role of a writer? It is just a satisfying one's own psychological compulsion, or he is a critical insider. He has to look into things. He has to have some questions of life which he can deal with. Or what is the role of inspiration and agency? That's again very important. Is it innate, or can it be cultivated with the help of others by keeping oneself in the company of some creative writers? Another important questions comes is whether it's all inspiration, all essential role of coming from somewhere, or is there any role of perspiration, hard work, sitting on the table? And all beside them, there are some more questions frequently asked by writers or to writers. So these are the questions I'll take up. So first question is, what is creative writing? I begin with the couplet. The couplet is, दिल में कोई दबी सी बात अभी भी है, दिल में कोई बात दबी सी अभी भी है, रोज सजती कोई बारात अभी भी है, हूँ वाकिफ सबसे फिर भी यूँ लगता है, एक अधूरी सी मुलाकात अभी भी है, वजूद में आने को ज़रा देखो गोश, एक हंसी कोई कायनात अभी भी है. I translate it. that there is still something buried in the heart, there is still a procession of longings smart. I know one and all here, but still there is a ride, the best and the last. See Ghosh, there is a feel somewhere of a beautiful world which is yet to start. So creative writing, it unfolds, it unfolds, unearth what is there inside you, within you. Writing is a kind of revelation. It reveals what is there within you, inside you. It's a revelation of what is dying within every moment. While we are, here in the world, we have so many things. We are not what we say, rather we are what many times we do not say. So writing is that faculty that unfolds what is there lying inside. So a creative writer meditates on either concrete things of the world or on abstract thoughts like love or divinity, and points out his feelings in his writing. He brings his unique inspiration into play. He brings his imagination to play. He may interact with his life around, and he may write about actual situations and events so as to enlighten, uplift and transport in a manner all his own, as in the poetry, novel, short story and drama. Indian aestheticians explain creative writing in the form of functions. There is a continuous journey of Indian aesthetics right from Bharat, from the 2nd century BCE to 17th century Pandit Jagannath. So in all the writers, in all the books, in all the aestheticians, if you read their first chapters, you would find that they are talking about the functions, the purpose of writing. And the common denominator is dharma, artha, kama, moksha. Duty, worldly possessions, desires and freedom from ignorance. In one way or the other, the writer is keeping this function in mind. So writer is not an ordinary person. He is different from others. In life, we are face to face with this great world, and our relations to the world are manifold. And one of these is the necessity of food, the necessity of clothes, and the materials from nature. Material possessions, day-to-day life we are talking about. Thus, we have our mind that finds out reason in things. When I say reason things, I include human nature, the mind, the states. So, we are subjective, we are objective, and we are neutral. But these states do not work in creative writing. We transcend them. Tagore says that there is yet another man, and that is personal man, who is above the needs both of body and mind, and wants to find something to fulfill. What to fulfill? That is love, that is relationship, that is responsibility, that is welfare, and it is the highest in man and has personal relations of its own with the great world. So, now he comes to satisfy this personality. He transcends his subjective, objective and neutral states. It is because of these states, because of this transcending the worldly states, a writer is different from others. T.S. Eliot says that one writes because one feels the need to free oneself of something. And what is something? It's a psychological and aesthetic compulsion. So, you read a poem, you watch theatre, movie, drama, you are not different that way, because while you are indulging or interacting in creative writing, you are elevating yourself to the level of a writer, so you can understand. So, psychological and aesthetic compulsion, they are indispensable for a writer as well as for the reader also. What we call as a sahridaya. In Indian tradition, a sahridaya means ones who share the qualities, the heart, that of the writer. So, Tagore says an artist acts as an agent of psychological transformation for creating a world of social cooperation and spiritual ideals of reciprocity. The artist has an enormous fund of emotional energy left in him after fulfilling the necessities of life for psychological transformation. T.S. Eliot said this is compulsion, but Tagore says this is a spiritual activity. So, it is not a compulsion, it is a transformation. You transform when illusion is removed. Here, so this surplus energy is very important. So, why is writer different from others? A writer has a surplus emotional energy with the help of which he acts as an insider and as a whole the world is transformed for him, or he is different from it, from others. Munshi Premchand, a great writer, he says that everybody cannot write. Those who have pain, affection, passion and thought inside them, only they can write. If you are not concerned with the people, if you are not concerned with their dreams, their desires, their states, their problems, and what is happening around, you cannot write. So, you have to be very sensitive. If you are indulging in materialistic pleasures and luxuries of life, then you cannot write. So, this is how here we need to understand that a writer has a particular set of mind with which he acts as a writer. The next question is, can creative writing be taught? This is again very important question. Generally, students, when they seek admission, come to the classroom, they have misconception, they have wrong assumptions sometimes that they would become writer. So, it is again a wrong assumption. You seek admission in MA English, you study music, you study other courses, but that does not mean that you become the master. In fact, you have been given tools. Now it depends upon your personality, in what way you use them. So there has been a debate over the issue of creative writing, that can they be taught at all? This is debate right from the very beginning. It has raised in various fora since the setting up of the first writing school. So, according to some, the creative writing courses are a waste of time, because they cannot write, they cannot tell a story, they do not have sensitivity, they do not have that kind of sensation, they do not have that kind of psychological compulsion, transformation. But there are people, those who say that talent is not important. Training, practice, opportunities are also important for becoming a creative writer. We all have faculty in one way or the other, but if you are in the company of great masters, if you are in the company of creative writers, they can facilitate you. So, that is again very important, to be in the company of great masters. Psychologically, we do not have a conscious effort, have a conscious thinking, but as a writer we have an anxiety of influence. Once you start writing, then you can later on realize, oh, this idea is coming, this idea I have read somewhere else, or I am writing this idea came from some writer, came from some writings. So, that shows that training and practice also are very important. The second question related to creative writing is that practically universities are offering creative writing courses at various levels. So, do the creative writing courses actually produce writers? I think this is again a misconception, it is again a wrong assumption. You cannot judge a course simply by the number of publishable authors it produces. You do not judge history or English courses by the number of history or English academics they produce. Obviously, it is great when people go on to achieve within the discipline, but often the course is about giving people the creative and analytical skills which they can use in other areas of their life. So, So, answer to the question of whether creative writing can be taught is both no and yes. Creative writing courses may not be able to create a writer, but they can definitely help identify and hone writing skills. They can help students start off in the course of writing and write better and faster than they would have done otherwise. And the third query people generally have, that they feel they have a potential to write, but they fail to do so. What should they do? For this, we need to understand what is an art like other arts. We need to understand, we know dancing, singing, drawing, painting and all. So, if you want to dance, what do? You go to the institute. If you want to learn drawing, painting, you go to the institute. But when it comes to creative writing, you question whether one can learn this art in an institute, in a course. The answer is yes, you can. So, all arts are the same, all needs a training. So, when we ask questions, we have solutions also. So, we need to apply all the questions and suggestions, assumptions to all arts, and then we have the answer. Yes, training or such courses are important. If you know, I remember when I conducted, I think it was first or second class, the boy asked, "Sir, I was under the impression that you would give us something with the help of which we will start writing." So, it is not a ready-made solution there in the classroom. You have to work, you have to write. Until or unless you make efforts, even these solutions do not work. So, when students ask, can they write or do they have creative faculty, or can they write? So, even in the classroom, I ask some counter questions, and the counter question is that, do you feel you have a psychological aesthetic compulsion? Psychologically, aesthetically, are you charged? Do you feel moved after watching a theatre, listening to some music, reading a poetry, reading a ghazal, short story, novel, fiction, whatever it is there. So, any form, do you feel charged? Do you feel changed? So, these are certain questions. So, if they do not move you, there is something missing. One has to have a conscious awareness. One has to have that psychological transformation for creating a world of social cooperation and spiritual ideals of reciprocity. Ask yourself, do you have an enormous fund of emotional energy with the help of which you can fulfill the necessities of life for psychological transformation? Do you have pain? Do you have affection, passion, thought inside you? I ask them some more questions, or you can ask yourself also. Does an aesthetic intuition charge you? Do the objects captivate your mind? Do you feel amazed at the sight of divine beauty? Do you sustain the course of thought? And do you feel like writing? That's very important. Do you feel like writing? Do you sit for writing? Do the thoughts knock? Do the thoughts trouble you while you are sleeping, you are sitting, talking? So that sensitivity is very important. Here, this is also important. You can say, yes, we feel moved, we have moral anxieties, but until or unless you translate that moral anxiety, that creative anxiety on your paper, it's useless. And that's very important, that's very difficult also. But yes, once you get it into it, then you don't have anything different to do. You are involved every time. You are concentrating on such issues. So, for writing, you have to cultivate the habit of writing, translating ideas coming to your mind on paper. This is what generally we don't do. Nobody else would come to write what you have. So you need to have a diary, you need to have a paper every time. Even you can use your mobiles while sitting there anywhere. So just give them write something, write some points where you can develop. So writer is not writing at a particular point of time. He is writing every time. He is writing in his mind. But you have to give a command to your mind, your chitta. If you understand the process, if you understand the theory of creative writing, then you can understand the role, how there is a set process of writing and how we are generally involved in such procedure or process, but we are not conscious. So you have to give a conscious command. Oh yes, now idea coming. There are five steps, 5 stages of creation, of a creative act, and this creative act is like that of the creation of the world. I have taken up these steps from Kashmir Shaivism. In Kashmir Shaivism, the theorists explain how the world is created by Lord Shiva, how it is transformed, how it is diffused, how there is aesthetic intuition working, and how the object of inspiration captivates. So, the first state is your creation, that is Srishti. What is Srishti? This is an aesthetic intuition. You are sitting, you are moving, you are talking, you are watching something, all of a sudden, and thereafter you are sitting. And when you are sitting, many times you have aesthetic intuition. Sometimes just seeing something you feel like doing, you feel like interacting, you feel like writing, you become so emotional. But we are not conscious. We undergo this experience for a time being and let it go. That is very important for a writer. That is very important for a prospective writer, that immediately he should write. This process takes place in two ways. Sometimes all of a sudden you are sitting at one point of time, you are sitting somewhere talking to some, and all of a sudden idea comes to you and you start writing. Sometimes you undergo a particular experience, thereafter, after 1 day, 2 days, maybe 1 week, maybe 1 month, and you are sitting, and then what Wordsworth says is spontaneous overflow of emotions. You undergo that emotional experience. So you do write. So you have to sensitive to your aesthetic intuition that charges you. Here you have to evolve a longing. So this first stage is a kind of longing for some situation, longing some object, longing for creating something. If you do not command yourself, so what is there? First, there has to be a desire, there has to be a will, there has to be a wish. Yes, I want to write. So once you decide, then that psychological compulsion starts working on you. So here second aspect is preservation. So initially, when there is an aesthetic intuition, you have then object of inspiration. That is your object of inspiration also. And this object of inspiration captivates your mind. But remember, it will captivate your mind only once you have that first state, that is aesthetic intuition. Then it sustains the course of thought. It compels you. There is kind of churning, and then there comes the third stage. Third is your transformation. It is also called as sanghar, but sanghar sometimes it is misunderstood. Sanghar does not mean destruction, but it means translation or transformation. Transformation is an indication of expression. It is the depth of the creative writer. It involves mixing of thought and thereby resulting into a new filtered form. Now, when there is a mixing, so it has raw material, it's the mixing of raw material, where you have pure thought, but there still there are some impurities, there are certain corruptions in the thought. Now, they have to be filtered out. So, then you enter into the fourth position, fourth state, that is your diffusion. Illusions are removed now, impurities are removed. So, you are writing, improving, revising. So, what you are doing? When you are improving, you are revising, you are removing impurities, you are removing illusions, you are diffusing illusions, and this leads to the revelation of a new world, the world which is different from the world you are in. This is the world where you are alone. You are alone, but you are not subjective purely, you are not purely objective, you are not purely neutral. It is a subjective objective complex. We are conscious that we are an individual, but we are also conscious about the universal soul, about the divine aspects that we are part of. And so, the moment there is a consciousness, this consciousness is psychological compulsion, psychological transformation, aesthetic transformation. And here, now we have a last stage, that is attainment of grace, the grace from the agency, divine agency. Why we call it a divine agency? Because now we are neither subjective nor objective nor neutral. So, we enter into a suprahuman world. Now, we listen to the murmurs of the ages. We have a sad lucidity of soul. What Shelley says, our saddest thought are those that tell of our sweetest songs are those that tell of our saddest thought. So, even sad things become full of joy. It does not happen in our real life. So, this is a state, it is a divine state where we are completely transformed. So, the ability to recognize the universal rhythm takes place in a particular state of mind when it wins over its fluctuations. Fluctuations will remind me of Patanjali Yoga Sutra, where he talks about the states of mind. Do you know, are you conscious about the states of mind? That you are sensitive, you are insensitive and dull, you are pointed, you are disturbed, you are meditative. So, sometimes it is sensitive and agitative, sometimes it is dull, sometimes it is disturbed, sometimes it is pointed, and sometimes it is meditative. These are the 5 states of your mind. As a creative writer, all these states, they help you writing. But if you have that aesthetic compulsion, they help you. But if you do not have that aesthetic compulsion, then they deviate you also. So, if you have that aesthetic compulsion or transformation, then you start using them and you enter into your final state of your mind. That final state of your mind is, that is meditative state. But here at this juncture also, there are 2 types. One is conscious meditative state and the second is trans-conscious meditative state. This trans-conscious meditative state is the state of a sage, a rishi, or a practitioner who is there to realize the absolute. But the function of writer is not trans-consciousness. He does not transcend the world, rather he is conscious about the welfare of the world. So, he is in this meditative state, but conscious about the world. So, at this, so here the process, when you take up the process of writing, there was the last one, the attainment of grace. So, attainment of grace is the state of conscious meditative state of mind. So, if you take up these issues, so if you understand them, then you can understand a writer is different from others. All these things take place, but you are not unaware, you do not go anything unattended. This is related to next issue, and that is your consciousness. Enlarging consciousness. How can you enlarge your consciousness? The first condition is to become conscious. We are not conscious about the things around us. Sometimes we become so insensitive. We are sitting even in our homes, in shops, in college, universities, classrooms. We are lost in a world where just we are all alone, but that alone is not for something creative. There you are indulging some other things of life. So, you have to be alone, but you have to be alone where you are involving yourself into an activity which deals with the thinking of the people, with the dreams of the people, with the desires of the people, where you intend to create a better world. So, you are alone there because you intend to create a better world. At this state, you are transcending yourself. You are entering into that suprahuman state. That is your subject object complex. In Buddhism, in Patanjali Yoga Sutra, in Jainism also, in their own ways, they talk about 4 prescriptions, sometimes as great habits or great cultures or behavior. They are called as Maitri, Karuna, Mudita, Upeksha. Maitri, friendliness; Karuna, compassion; Mudit, pleasing; Upeksha, indifferent. So, a writer is impregnated with this kind of habits, and it is because of them the writer turns from lौकिक into अलौकिक, worldly into suprahuman state. It is not a divine state, but a suprahuman. Why suprahuman? Because now you are looking at things from the point of view of others. You are not selfish about yourself. Here, your mind is in a state of luminosity. There is a liquefaction of tamas and rajas, the mode of passion, the mode of dullness. And as soon as they are liquefied, you enter into a state of sattva, that is the state of purity, and there all passions are gone. You transcend your selfishness. So, this whole mixing, all this liquefaction of modes or the qualities that inundates the inner consciousness. So, inundating your consciousness is enlarging your consciousness. Plato talks about this enlarging consciousness. He said that if a writer has the faculty, if the writer is equipped with consciousness, then he is away from corrupting influence. So, the writer has to be, or the writer should be free from corrupting influence. So, that process, this creative process, that takes place at psychological level. Plato says that the writer is amazed at the sight of godlike form. He then comes to the second stage. There is a shudder runs through him. and then shudder passes over into an unusual heat of perspiration. That is, there is a kind of irritation, effervescence. And now the soul looks at beauty on the earth. She received this sensible, warm traction of particles, and Plato called this traction of particles attraction. So, with this attraction, the soul is transformed, utterly forgetful of himself or herself. He says that there are 4 types of joy, ecstasies, and one of them is the creative ecstasy. So, as soon as you enlarge your consciousness, as soon as you enter into some aesthetic compulsion, as soon as you are psychologically transformed, there we have this ecstasy, that is creative ecstasy. There are other kinds of ecstasies also. He talks about prophetic madness, ecstasy of the worshipper, and the ecstasy of the lover of the beautiful. So, this creative ecstasy means enlarging your consciousness, transformation of your personality. So, this creative ecstasy is the extraordinary quality of a creative writer. He or she is winged soul, he says, which has seen most truth. And further, it has been explained in the next slide, where different creative writers, they explain how a writer should behave. What is a writer? The creative writer says the writer has to act like an insider, critical insider. How they explain it? They say that the writer has to be concerned with the everyday world of people's life. Though he is psychologically transformed, he has aesthetic compulsion, he has enlarged his consciousness, he has entered into a state where he has attained grace, where he is entered into a state that is your trans-conscious state, but still he is concerned with the everyday world of people's life, because he is working for them, he is working for the welfare of others. He has inherent flexibility untouched by the conflict in the realms of political state, and so he allows their coexistence. So, writer, he has once his consciousness is enlarged, the whole world is in view. So, a writer has to acquire a world view which enables him or her to see as much of the world as it is possible for him or her to make him or her readers see. A famous American writer says that the writer has to liberate himself or herself from certain inhibiting angles of vision, whether he will choose the angle of vision of the possessing classes or the angle of vision of the dispossessed. So he has to liberate from inhibitions, prejudices. He is not a party to groups. So he should allow coexistence of others. So he has to identify himself or herself with suffering masses. So once you identify yourself with suffering masses, you are enlarging your consciousness, you are taking into consideration the worldview as a subject for your aesthetic compulsion, your aesthetic act. So you have to narrate the nation as a writer, you have to reflect various moods and movements, anxieties and aspirations, dreams and desires, disillusionments and disappointments, failures and achievements of the people. Anantamurthy, he says that the writer is a truly critical insider. You are living in the society, but at the same time you are watching them critically, involving as a critic, but not subjective, not objective, not neutral. You are watching them from afar, from a distant place. You are a part of, but you are not. If you read Keats, Keats uses the one word, impersonality. Negative capability. T.S. Eliot used impersonality. What they are doing, what they are talking about, that you have to keep yourself away from people, away from society, away from prejudices, away from your personal relations. And then what you do? Wordsworth, Matthew Arnold, he has written a poem, Resignation. And if you just read this poem, how it goes, that there is such a writer, one who has psychological transformation, one who has enlarged his consciousness, one who has entered into the state of meditation, that is transconscious state, one who has liberated himself or herself from inhibitions, from prejudices of life, one who is narrating or who has to narrate the nation, the aspirations, the differences, the manifestations, desires, sufferings of people. He says, such a writer gazes, tears are in his eyes, and in his ears the murmur of 1,000 years. There is a murmuring. So you are sitting at one place, but you are but things are bothering you. In your eyes you have ears for others, tears for others. You have murmur of 1,000 years. Before him, he sees life unroll, a placid and continuous whole, the general life which doesn't cease. general life, the day-to-day life, the petty things of life. They do not seize you, do not stop you. The general life which doesn't seize, whose secret is not joy but peace. So now writer is not writing for joy, rather for peace, where he can create a better world. And then he continues that life whose dumb wish is not missed, if birth proceeds, if things subsist, the life of plants and stones and rain, the life he craves, if not in vain, fate gave what chance shall not control, his sad lucidity of soul. So two things are very important. It's a journey now, even from joy to peace, where sad lucidity of soul. So when Shelley says our sweetest songs are those that tell of her saddest thought, here that is the expression of sad lucidity of soul. Now the next question, next issue, which generally a student asks or sometimes keep in one's mind, that is there any role of inspiration? Is there any role of some ascension? Creativity certainly is often linked with inspiration and agency. What is this inspiration? It's a cause of the effect. It's cause of it. It's you know, in the same way, the way we use it as a metaphysical question in philosophy, the theory of existence. So that theory of existence, that is applied here also. So there is a cause. You have a subject you are writing about, that is not cause. But from where? What is this cause? From where this inspiration coming? Where, what is that agency? Plato, in his Apology, says that a creative writer writes not by wisdom, he doesn't write by his knowledge of the rules, it is God who speaks through him. So writer is not writing something at a very surface level. It's God speaking through him. Because now there is no difference. There is a merger with absolute. Now the writer is above the difference in perception. So it's a kind of direct transmission. You know, Aurobindo's Savitri, a great epic. When this epic was written by Sri Aurobindo, a journalist came to him and asked him how he had composed this Savitri so great. It's a so great epic. Sri Aurobindo replied that it was not he who had written this epic. He was just an instrument. It was a direct transmission from God. So it is the same what Plato says, that writer doesn't write himself, rather it's God who speaks through the writer. Similarly, so Aurobindo says that he was receiving a direct inspiration from God. The journalist asked a counter question. Sir, if it was a direct transmission from God, why did you revise it? Shri Aurobindo revised Savitri so many times. So he asked, why did you revise it? Aurobindo said, that it was the flaw in the instrument, it was the limitation of the instrument which could not embrace, which could not retain the transmission, the idea, the thought which was coming from God. So it is because of that he has to revise it again and again. He has to revise it many times. College also reposes faith in some suprahuman agency. And there, in one of his poems, he describes how the divinely agency created a kind of consciousness, created an opportunity to make college capable of writing. He says in one of his poems, and all who heard should see them there, and all should cry, beware, beware, his flashing eyes, his floating hair, weave a circle around him thrice, and close your eyes with holy dread, for he on honey dew with fed and drunk the milk of paradise. So this milking of paradise, drinking of the milk of the paradise. Similarly, for Wordsworth, it was inspiration from nature, which is divine. Here there is also answer to these students, which generally asks that what is that which inspires you, which inspires anybody for any creative act. Wordsworth says, to me the meanest flower that blows can give thoughts that do often lie too deep for tears. Even a smaller grass, leaf of grass, blade of grass can inspire me. So for inspiration, you do not need anything great. Even all small things, petty things of life can agitate you, can move you. And it depends upon your nature also, how you are moved. Sometimes you have to keep your mind, accordingly, you keep your mind on certain things. You know, when Wordsworth and Coleridge they started writing, they had a contact. What was the contact? That Wordsworth would show natural things as supernatural, and Wordsworth would show natural things as supernaturals. So it could be supernatural thing that can inspire you. It could be a natural things, a petty things that can inspire you. So though human heart is prioritized here, but Wordsworth invests nature with awe and inspiring power. So it's a matter of mystical communication between the poet and the nature. This is how Wordsworth explains. This was an age, 19th century was an age where they were writing infusing emotions, charm, beauty and all, which was very close to a common man. But that does not mean then thereafter this agency, inspiration did not work. It's there. Even contemporary artists, with the secularization of life, have relocated inspiration to various other quarters. For them, they have childhood experience, they have works of other writers or artists, or they have conscious or unconscious motivation from others. Even if you look back into the street of your past, you would find whatever you are doing, that unconsciously you enter into a zone which was created by somebody else. So that is sure that there has to be and there is always some agency, some inspiration to let you enter into a creative act. But is it all inspiration? Do we not need having anything else? Yes, inspiration is not all. Sometimes the writers have their own opinion that you have to utilize that inspiration. You have to captivate yourself. You have to channelize that energy, that inspiration, that agency. Then you can materialize things. And there are certain, writers, those who talk about perspiration. Perspiration, actual writing, hard working, sitting, collecting material and putting it into a coherent way. So, this coherence is very important. Things are there, material is scattered here and there. So, in order to use your inspiration, you have to have perspiration also. You have to make effort. You cannot be working with by undermining the act of creation. So, that is important, that effort is important, that act is important, you can't undermine that. There is a writer, well known composer, Stephen Stuckey, and he explains how he composes, how he writes his compositions. He says, in my line of work, I often overhear myself described as a creative person, yet I identify much more readily with those working stiffs who slug it out down in trenches day in, day out. So, even he says, people have wrong assumption about writing, act of writing. He identifies himself with people working in the trenches, common people, with laborers. He has to have that labor also. So, he simply says 5% is inspiration and 95% is perspiration. There is another writer, Paul Hindemith, the great German composer. So, when he was asked where he got his ideas, he simply held up his pencil. Means sitting on the table, sitting on the computer, putting your ideas on paper. Similarly, there is yet another name, Sir Harrison Buswhistle. When he was asked, what he said was, what occupies every working artist is simply how the hell you do it. So, nothing is, there is no other way out. You have to sit, you have to do, you have to act, you have to take a conscious decision to write. And then Stuckey talk about the influence of anxiety. We are impressed, and we should be impressed as a writer. We should read sensitively how others write. Stuckey says that I took prose style of Nabokov, the brilliant textures and finely judged juxtapositions of Stravinsky, and he says that he took up the humane lyrical voice of poet Archie Emmons. That also unfolds that we have to be voracious reader. We should read the writings of the great writings of others. They can create base. So, if I conclude this interview of Stuckey, We can say a writer has 5% inspiration, 95% perspiration. He has to sit long, hard, unglamorous hours spent with pencils and papers, and reading and imitating the works of great writers is another important aspect for writing. There are few more suggestions. This is an interview which you must read. The interview of Umberto Eco. This is an small, in the form of essay, form of lesson, written by Umberto Eco. He's a great writer, and I think his interview for a prospective writer is very nice, very good. It's very inspiring, encouraging. Umberto Eco was a professor at the University of Bologna in Italy and had already acquired a formidable reputation as a scholar for his ideas on semantics, literary interpretations and medieval aesthetics before he turned to writing fiction. And his, the corpus of writing includes so many things: literary fiction, academic texts, essays, children's books, newspaper writings and all. He was when his publication, The Name of the Rose, published, he became the stardom, because $10 million copies of the novel, The Name of the Rose, were sold, and he acquired the equivalent of intellectual stardom. When he was interviewed, he also gave some suggestions. Generally, David Lodge, the name of David Lodge, a critic working with semantics. So, he made a remark about Umberto Eco, that he is writing novels, he is writing for newspapers, he is writing poetry, he is a professor, he is everything. But how is possible? How can one do all these things? Umberto Eco, so when the question was asked, Umberto Eco said, yes, I am convinced I am always doing the same. That is something very important. If you are a writer, or even not a writer, whatever you are, you have a particular personality. You are unfolding that personality everywhere, as a teacher, as a student, as a writer, as a musician, as a composer. So, you have to decide now where you have to use your energy. Umberto Eco said, I was using all facets of my personality everywhere. I was everywhere narrating myself. As a researcher, I was narrating myself. As a teacher, I was narrating myself. As a writer, I was narrating myself. So, these are not different jobs. These are not different things. So, I was doing the same. And then, another important things he talked about was that use your empty spaces. Generally, there is a complaint that we do not have time. Umberto Eco says we have lot of time, but we waste time. Sometimes waiting for somebody, sitting all alone idle, doing nothing. So Umberto Eco says that I never missed any empty moment. So even when I am waiting for my friends or somebody else coming to me, so in the meanwhile when I am waiting, I am not sitting blank, I am not wasting this time, I am doing something, I am writing something, thinking something. So I use time. So that's why that also helped me writing what I had in my mind. He further says, he talked about Roland Barthes. He says that Roland Barthes is his friend. So Roland Barthes wanted to become a novelist. He was all the time he was writing theories and all, giving theories. Do you remember the theory which he gave, Roland Barthes? The important, the sentence was death of the author. That's what he, that there is no need. So while you are reading a text, there is no need of the author. So author is dead. He wanted to so he was frustrated. Why he was frustrated? That he wanted to write novel, but he could never find time, and he never could write. Umberto Eco says, I was a professor, I was having time in Sundays. I thought that I started writing. So I did not make plans to write. So again, for a prospective writer, this is important. You need not to create a time. You have lot of time. There are empty spaces in your life every moment, every time, every day. You have to use those spaces. Once you use them, then you would be using your creativity, your ideas, your thinking. You will be fulfilling your aesthetic compulsion, psychological transformation. So this interview suggests, number one, filling up empty spaces in life. So use your time creatively. That is something very important. Once you are conscious that I shall use my time creatively, that means you are indulging in an act which is creative. And number two, you are not a different person, different personality, which is changing at every moment. You are doing this one and the same thing every time. What you have to do is that you have to use that matter. You have to use that matter, that material, the ideas, the thinking, the stuff in the same way, without letting others know that now you are writing, now you are teaching, now you are professionally doing something. Even while you are talking to your friends, many times you do not let them know what is your intention. Suppose you have learned something and you want to revise it, you want to learn it, so you talk to your friends, giving some examples without letting them know that you are revising. So give instruction to your mind. Be conscious that you are doing every time one and the same thing. And next important thing, think, do you have something interesting to say? We all have something interesting to say, but we do not prepare ourselves to share with others. Actually, if you do not share with others, others will go somewhere else. So nobody is waiting for you. As a writer also, if you have something to share, share with others directly. Just talk to them. So when you are writing, you are talking directly to your reader. So once you are talking directly to your reader, you are creating your followers, you are creating your friends. So it happens in your life, it happens in your creative act, it happens everywhere. So you have to be, next is your authentic personal manner. That is a living, companionable human being. That again, that means that you are talking to people, to your reader directly. So these are the suggestions made by Eco. So finally, if I talk about the total suggestions, then we come to know that these suggestions are filling up empty spaces. Number 2, think and act as if you are doing the same every time. Third, sensation, something is interesting to say. If you have, do it because it teaches and amuses others. Don't waste your time. If you have something to say, be quick in your response. Must have then authentic personal manner, talking directly to the reader. Then 5% inspiration, 95% inspiration means creative act. And you have to have long, hard, unglamorous hours spent with pencil and paper, reading and imitating the works of writers. And the last one is imagination. So these are certain generally a student ask. So one word is here, that is, you have to command, you have to give a command to work, to act, to write. Once you decide, other things will follow. Certain these are in one or the other, these are the questions asked to writers. I take up again in different forms frequently asked questions to writers, and the first question which is asked is, What drew you toward a particular form or genre of writing or subject? So you want to write poetry, you want to write short story, you want to write for newspaper, you want to write drama or play. So what is that? When you choose subject for them, how do you feel attracted? How do you decide that this, when I was writing for drama, so this was the thing which attracted me, which inspired me. So the answer is, the writers generally say, this is all your personal experience and social experience. When you are writing, what you are doing? Personal experience, social experience, and also your imagination. There is a mixing of your own experience with your imagination. You have to create an idea where objects have been shown in words, and then you have to one more keep in your mind, that is your, sometimes what happens, that you start writing as a fashion where then you forget your own mother tongue. So whenever you start writing your mother tongue. So if you write in your mother tongue, if you have personal social experience, if you have connection with the objects and words, if you know how to use language creatively, I think this is how you can start. The second question that comes in, what tells you that you are ready to begin a poem? What is that? How do you come to know? How do you know that which object captivates your mind? But that is not, that's not a requirement at all. That's not a compulsion. That's not a compulsory question. That's not a need, necessity. If you remember Wordsworth, when he says that to me the meanest flower that can inspire. So even a small article can inspire you. You have to have that eye, you have to have the sensitivity, you have to have that connection. So once you enlarge your consciousness, things start coming to you. Around you there are number of things, around you there are number of words, expressions, opportunities. So there is no set rule to begin a poem. So anything can trigger a poem, anything trigger your creative act. It might be an image, a phrase, an insistent rhythm, or some physical sensation. So writings have their beginning in such uncertain material, and the writer is constantly wrestling with them. Why you are wrestling? Because it's not one thing with you. There are a number of things before you. You have to decide. So there is thus an overwhelming need to translate experience into language to give it a more permanent form. those who are writers, they can, if you just talk to them, they can tell them their personal experience, that how one experience impelled him or her to write. Parthasarathy once, was interviewed. He wrote a poem on Ghalib. So, the poem was having something historical, some historical amount. So, he asked Parthasarathy, how much did you research for writing this? Partha said, no, I did not do any research. I was there near the tomb of Ghalib and I composed this poem. So, anything which is close to your heart, anything can trigger you. There is a Urdu couplet which very aptly unfolds the act of a creative writer. The couplet is कि मैंने तो यूं ही हाथ फेरा था रेत पर, गौर से देखा तो तेरी तस्वीर बन गई. So sometimes it so happens, you start writing. When you start writing, you do not have any image in your mind. You do not know how will I write. You just write first line of a poem and you think that you are writing a love poem or you are writing something very related to the sufferings of people, but gradually you revise it again and again, and in the end you find that it is entirely different from the image which you had at your initial level. So, it happened. So, creative act is not your own child. You are just writing, it's some agency, it's coming from somewhere else. Then, next question is, do you work to a schedule, a fully worked out plan, and do you know where you are going when you start? So, schedule also, this is again, so when to write, for how long and how much time one has to devote. So, a writer is not free, every time he is writing. He is writing, sitting, talking while he is sitting, while he is talking, or doing something. His mind is all the time absorbed. He is composing orally, he is composing silently in his mind, and then later on he translate the idea which had come to his mind on page. Even you are writing when you are sleeping, if you are a writer. You have an anxiety, suppose you started writing a poem or a short story, many times, so you are meeting people and you sometimes see that your character resembles your friend, your character resembles somebody you are seeing, somebody you are coming across at different places. So, you are every time involved in your creative act. And yes, one more thing, the moment you start translating your experience and start putting on the page, then line after line following you. But writer doesn't know where to go or where the poem is going to end. You work with the poem day and night, you revise it, read it, share it again and again, and then one day you say, I think now it is finished. So even you are not sure. There is something, so it's in bold, and I say, I think it is finished. You just think, but even it is not finished. And then generally people ask, how much do you research? How many times do you revise your work? So this process of revision continues even after a poem has been published. That search is always there in your mind. एक तलाश है आपके अंदर, भटक रही है एक तलाश, एक भटकते हुए आप कि मैं भी कितना और ठीक करूं इसको, और कोई कैरेक्टर हो सकता है मेरा, I can have some other words also. How can I use this phrase? You read it loudly, you share with the people, you read it again and again. So that is, so you are beautifying it, you are creating a charm, you are creating a sensation, and you are sharing, because it's very difficult to share your own inner experience with others. So creative aspect, this creative act is an act through which you share your own experience, which you cannot do otherwise. And this is how. So you are involved every moment, you are involved every time you are writing. What you have to do is that you have to give a conscious instruction. You have to instruct yourself that you would start writing. But once you sit to write your experience, your ideas, then other things will follow. So the punchline is, you sit to write. Whenever you have an idea in your mind, whenever you feel agitated, whenever you feel moved, whenever you think that now you are having aesthetic compulsion, psychological transformation, you have surplus emotional energy or emotions, so you need to unfold yourself, you need to enlarge your consciousness, you need to your empty spaces, and when you do it, then definitely you can write and you can improve upon your writing. But yes, this is not for an hour, this is not for a day. Once you become a writer, you are engaged every moment, you are not free. Gharib says in one of his couplet कि मकतबे इश्क का दस्तूर निराला देखा, उसको छुट्टी न मिली जिसने सबक याद किया. So you are not free once you start writing. You have a ishq, you have a love for writing once, you are always there, you are not free, you are alone but you are with the world within, where you start enjoying, where you have sad lucidity of soul, where you hear the murmurs of ages, where you have joy, where you have peace, where the sweetest songs of yours become the saddest thought. But that saddest thought does not have pain for you. You are not indulging in the pains of life. You are away from Jagat Anand, worldly pleasures. You are away from the limitations of life. Rather, you become unlimited. But yes, what you have to do, that you have to sit and you have to write what you have in your mind, and you have to share directly. So, you have to talk to your reader directly. I think these are the certain issues. If we work on them, so we can improve upon our writings. Thank you.